guest is Karen Holton, ET and angelic experiencer, exopolitical ambassador, holistic coach, and transdimensional channeler. Her professional experience includes shamanic guidance, awakening, and ascension counseling, as well as public discourses. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, Karen hosts the Quantum Guides Show. This weekly podcast is really suited to awaken people and for those who are already awoken, but maybe for socially isolated from their alternative beliefs. She also hosts a new live podcast called Aliens and Angels, which focuses on personal and collective paranormal experiences. Karen believes that self-love and self-care build the foundation for personal activism, awakening, and ascension as we become the change we wish to see in the world. Okay, you can check out, later on I'll share it also, but I'll just let you know now, you can check out Karen's unique content on her social media platforms at Karen Holton Television. Let's welcome today's guest, Karen Holton. Welcome.
Hi, so I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you so much for having me as your guest on your show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Lovely.
I've seen a few of the interviews that you've done and with some of the people that you've interviewed, and it's interesting, fascinating, and you do a nice job of calmly getting information and having a nice conversation. And for me, it's also an important aspect of on the human level to be able to share information that resonates with others, and living an authentic life and an authentic self. And I know for yourself, for example, I read that you were morbidly obese, and you went through a major depression and exhaustion. I think it was in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yep.
Going through something like that, was that the dark night of the soul for yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Because I had previously given my power to the medical industry, and I kept going to the doctor expecting to get a pill that would help me. And really, ultimately, I had to learn how to care for myself and how to change my own reality by changing myself. So I had to look at what was I eating, what was my lifestyle. I had to look at all kinds of things. I had to do the dark night of the soul. I had to do a lot of shadow work. I had to get to know the aspects of myself that I had hidden because it was shocking and very uncomfortable to look at those aspects. But I felt that I needed to do that. And it was through that process that later led to me having contact and being able to have the paranormal experiences that I have. So I'm not saying I'm perfect. It's a journey. We're all working on it all the time. But oh, my life is just so much better. Just so
Yeah.
much better now.
Yeah, it's interesting because from my own perspective, looking at it, once I removed my hand from the handrail, so to speak, of conventional medicine in combination with learning holistic approaches towards things such as acupuncture, acupressure, and then going into Reiki and other healing modalities, I was able to then build, I guess, the momentum or the confidence to override all the conditioning that had been taking place. And then witnessing other people uh, behaving in a manner that mirrored what I viewed myself as in a negative way really shook me up, as it did over the last 4 years, as a reminder of that. But from your perspective, understanding where you are, I guess it was an awakening, and we all go through these awakening processes. We all have an experience that shakes us up, whether it's a near-death experience or whether what you just expressed. So maybe you can share with the audience a little bit about your ET experience that took place, I guess, after these experiences that you had.
Sure. So it all came as much as a surprise to myself as to anybody else. And my experience was a little different. I never experienced a UFO or spaceship coming and beaming me aboard or grays coming and getting me. It didn't happen to me like that at all. And how it happened to me was later, much later, like just in the last few years, I finally understood the mechanisms, how it works for me. We can get into that a bit later if you like. But I was just, what's interesting is I had been using cannabis, for chronic pain and for sleep and different things like that. I had a medical license for it. And it was while I was taking a break from that, that I had what I'm gonna call my trans-dimensional experiences. So I'm not saying it's good or bad, or you should or you shouldn't, that's not my point. My point is that it was while I was taking a break from it, that this just spontaneously started to happen for me. And basically, I would go to bed at night and in my pajamas, in my bed, and I was someplace else, and I had the most amazing experiences aboard a large, what I perceived to be a spacecraft. Now, in the morning, I would wake up and I would be in my pajamas in my bed. And so at first, I thought I was dreaming because it was really quite fantastical what I was experiencing. Then I realized it couldn't be dreams because my dreams are often kind of convoluted, disjointed, don't necessarily follow a linear pattern. But what was happening for me at night was very um, congruent. Where I left off the night before when I went to bed and fell asleep, the following night, I picked up where I left off. And there was a huge time dilation. So I was gone for weeks, even months, and then wake up the next morning back in my bed in my reality. So when I realized I wasn't dreaming, I actually thought that perhaps I was crazy. I had never heard of anybody having experiences like this before. I had never had an experience like this before. But there wasn't much I could do about it because obviously because the experiences were not scary or frightening, they were very, very user friendly for me. I assumed that I had um, agreed to do this. And so I just sort of went with it. But my entire social reality here on Earth was really screwed up because you can't imagine what it's like to be away, to adjust to being away, being in this incredible environment of learning and fellowship, and then boom, wake up and I'm back home again. And personally, I preferred the life I had on the big ship to the one I did here on Earth. So this happened every single night for 3 months. And as abruptly as it started, it stopped. And it took me, a couple of years really of just kind of shaking my head and trying to make sense of it all, trying to put what I had experienced into practical terms because I knew that one day I would want to tell people. This happened about 2013, but I didn't actually start telling people about it on social media until 2017 because it took me, it really messed me up. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sorry for the experience. It was wonderful. I'm so happy that I had it. I'm now working on my book. I'm more than halfway through. So hopefully soon that will come out and everyone can read about it in great detail. But and I'm well adjusted to it now, and now I understand how it works and how that was possible for me. And so I'm pretty comfortable talking about it. Now, it's such a big experience, Adam. It would be best if you asked me specific questions so I know what to zero in on what kind of information or what part of my experience you'd like to know more about.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. The interesting thing that you speak of is that you had the opportunity to at least share this experience, which gives it a sense of reality as well as a sense of cleansing for yourself rather than sitting with it. Um,
Yeah.
if you say an experience took place over 3 months, obviously it would be a difficult thing to speak over in a short summarized version. So I guess my question would be is first off, were you in the presence of anyone in this on this earth in the house or where you were living that you had contact with as soon as you had these experiences? First off,
Well, I was living alone with my cat, but of course, I talked to my daughter and my son and started telling them all about it. And I mean, I did, it it wasn't that they didn't believe me, they just kind of went, "Okay," and didn't really have much of a response because what can you say?
Right.
They didn't know whether I had, slipped off my rocker or whether I was having they just didn't know, um, really what to make of it, and
Yeah.
I tried telling other people, but I very quickly realized this was not at that point in time, it was not time to share. And, it was enough me having to deal with the experience myself on a personal level. I didn't need any more social ostracism or stigmatization or anything to
Right.
add to it. So I actually became very much a recluse after that while I sort of sorted things out. And and again, it took me time to realize that I wasn't crazy
Yeah.
because I thought, how could this be possible? I had no idea how this could be possible.
Yeah. When you're telling your family, are you telling them in intervals, or are you telling them the first experience you've had, or you wait till 2013 to tell them in full what took place?
Oh, no, this was while it was happening. So I'd wake
Okay.
up in the morning and I'd, call my daughter and say, "Oh my God, you would not believe what happened to me last night." And then I did this, and then I did that. And if you want, I could give you a very short
Yeah,
overview of what my experience involved without getting into details at this point, if you like.
that would be perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what I'd
Okay,
like.
so the first experience I had was what I call orientation. So I was in like a huge room, didn't realize I was on what I would loosely call a spaceship. I was in there with some other human-like beings that did not look that much different than us. Now, even when you look at the human population, there's huge diversity in skin tones, sizes of our ears, shapes of our noses. Well, the same is true with ET. And not all the people in this room were actually even what we would consider extraterrestrial. So let me just clarify. Eventually, I realized and I was taught that the big ship, I call it the big ship because it's huge. It's larger than one of our huge mega cities here on Earth. Massive, massive, massive vehicle type of vehicle. And it isn't in any one particular place. So it's not in our solar system. It's not in our galaxy. It's not even really in our universe. Where it is in interdimensional space. So if you could imagine a Venn diagram with many, many, many overlapping ovals, and they're all overlapping only in one spot. There is one spot where they all overlap. So this is where the big ship actually resides. It resides in interdimensional space. And this is how they're able to take people from different densities, different realities, different dimensions, all kinds of different, what I'll loosely call places, and how we're able to meet in this one place. When the big ship needs to move location, it actually doesn't go anywhere. Point A becomes point B. I know this is a lot to wrap your head around, but if you can just get the gist that this is an interdimensional space, and all of us beings that are there, I could call them people because in my experience, there was no scary looking beings. There was no frightening looking beings. There was no beings that looked like they evolved out of other species. We were all very much like the human population with some variations that are a bit different than what we have here. So getting back to how I first experienced it, it was what I call an orientation period. So very soon we realized that we were there for a purpose. And the beings who welcomed us again looked very much like us. There is a difference though. Most of them are taller, larger frames, extremely healthy, very peaceful, very loving, and nobody speaks any language. The universal language is telepathy, and it's a combination of body sensations, abstract concepts, geographical type shapes, and spontaneous knowings, and that's how we're able to communicate. So in the beginning, those of us who were having our orientation process, we were not good at broadcasting, but we sort of got the gist of what we were being directed to do or being told. And we also were very aware that these beings were able to pick up on how we were feeling and what we were wanting. So the first thing I did was went through, they had it's like a tunnel about 10 feet long, and you walk through it, and they have technology, so they're able to find out everything about me, not just my physical health, my physical structure, my genetic code, but they even can pick up things like trauma, any, traumas that we might be hanging on to, even intergenerational issues. Is very, very advanced. And then we were assigned a buddy, and the buddy is somebody, well, really somebody, who as close as possible matches the way we look, so that the integration would be more smooth and more compassionate. And that buddy stays with us until we're ready to let them go. Mine even stayed with me, slept in the same bed as me, never let me out of her sight until I was ready to start spending time on my own and I was getting adjusted. Within the first, now they don't have day or night. Like, this is hard to describe because it's quite different than here on Earth. They don't have day and night, but they do have sleep cycles and wake cycles, and different beings have different needs, different circadian rhythms and things. But anyway, she showed me my quarters, and I was concerned because I knew I wasn't at home, and I have this little cat at home. Who's going to look after her and feed her? Like, nobody knows I'm gone. My kids don't know. No one knows I'm away. And she let me know through telepathy that it would be exactly the same as if I just woke up in the morning and no time except for the night had passed. And then I felt a lot calmer, and I felt more willing to just go with the flow and unfold this adventure and see what was in store for me. And so I was there for, I would consider it like 2 weeks of our experience. And when I woke up in the morning and I was back home, back in my bed, it kind of freaked me out because I was getting used to being there. And it was a nice place to be. And then to come back and then go, oh my God, it was a dream. Oh, I feel so ripped off that it was just a dream, right?
Wow.
And it wasn't until I had several weeks of this that I started realizing there's no way I could be dreaming. So on consecutive visits, um, I took part in learning how to become more proficient with telepathy. So they have those beings are actually able to communicate through telepathy directly with the big ship. So the big ship is actually an organic being of itself. It's not made out of metal and parts. It's not mechanical. It's an actual living conscious being in itself. And so they're able to communicate back and forth. But I wasn't able to do that, for quite a while. But they did have kind of like a virtual reality. It was just a little band that I wore over the back of my head, and it had two little knobs that sort of rested on my temples. And then I was able to get my learning directly from the big ship and interface with the big ship through that device. And then I took the lessons every day. I practiced and spent time alone in my quarters practicing to learn telepathy. And there's basically 4 phases. I won't get into it now, but until you become really proficient at it. And I caught on pretty quick, but the part I really had difficulty with, and this is interesting, is we think of telepathy as just kind of broadcasting, but telepathy is not at all like that. It's we have to learn the skills to either keep our thoughts to ourselves and not share them at all, to have like a screening, not a device, but a way that we screen our personal life and our thoughts, We need to learn how to share our communication with just a few people or just one being. And then we need to also learn how to broadcast to a larger crowd. And that was the most challenging for me, especially the keeping my thoughts private. So think of it as whispering, and I was like yelling, and that was the most difficult part. Once I got that really, set, and I was pretty good at that. Plus, every day I went for walks with my buddy, and we just looked at everything on the big ship. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm going to just tell you one of the technical aspects of the big ship is everything we could want is in every space. So there is some spatial layout, but generally whatever we need, like for instance, if we have to go to the bathroom, and that was the other weird thing about this experience. I had the experience of sleeping, waking, eating, going to the bathroom. It was very physical feeling while I was there. So everything is provided for us, but it's not all activated all the time. So if you can imagine if we walked into a big castle, there'd be rooms and hallways and everything. Well, not so much on the big ship. What we need becomes manifest when we need it. And I don't know if it's kind of like nanotechnology or what, but like for instance, my quarters, the door to my quarters doesn't exist. I'm just in this long kind of an ovoid shaped tubular hallway. And when I get to the place where I know my quarters are, and that's a long story, and I don't want to get too technical because I know you want an overview of my experience. But basically, the door just appears, it just materializes. So it doesn't pixelate, it's absolutely smooth. It just appears. And you don't open the door or close the door. It just is open. I go in and then it dematerializes back into a wall again. And the same thing with where I slept and everything else. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now there is some differences to that. Like for instance, I want to talk about the food we ate while I was there. So there was no animals or animal husbandry that I saw any evidence of. All the food grows and in every department, and it kind of grows out of the walls, or there'd be these beautiful ornate sort of sitting areas that had areas that would grow things, and everything was edible and fresh and alive. And we would just
Wow.
basically snack, and once a day, well, not really a day, but once on a week cycle, we'd gather and we'd actually make a bit of a meal together. But besides that, that's where all the food was. So it was beautiful and lush and very fresh environment to be in. And I got to meet some other beings. Most were taller than me with larger frames, some were smaller. They had most beings are actually all shades of brown, if you can imagine, very, very similar to here on Earth. Some were very pale, like myself. Well, I got a bit of a tan right now, but I'm a pretty pale person, really. And some had little bit skin tones, maybe more orange. Some had skin tones, maybe a bit more blue. But basically, nothing shocking or too out of the ordinary. There were some beings that had what I would call special abilities that was surprising. Um, and oh, the other thing I want to mention too is that these beings live all the time on the big ship. They don't live on any particular planet. And they've been emigrating for thousands of years. And there's no concept for racism. There's no concept for a lot of the things that humans have that we use that divide us. They just don't have it there. They don't even, I mean, females do produce offspring, they don't clone, and males do impregnate females, but besides that, there's no issues around gender or expectations around gender or anything like that. And so a lot of these beings have intermarried. And so, their children are the product of perhaps two different genetic combinations from different worlds. It's really was quite an eye-opening situation and very complex. Like I couldn't tell you they're from here or they're from there. I
Right.
couldn't say they look like this or they look like that. There was really a lot of diversity, and I was very comfortable with it. They don't have a lot of the hangups that we have. They're just basically they are like what we will be at our next stage of development. Once we put away our personal differences, our collective differences, once we put away tribalism and inflated ego and mental illness, and once we become to the point where we just want peace and a loving environment, and we start to use our own God-given senses, we're able to we can use
Yeah.
telepathy. It's available to all of us. We just have to practice and bring that skill back into our human population. So they're not that far ahead of us, but I got to tell you, it was really, really beautiful. Later on, because like I said, my experiences were like about 3.5 years, even though I was only gone for the nighttime within 3 months of Earth time. So later on, I got training and I got to work in a program which I'm calling, because we don't have Earth names for things. I'm going to call it the pre-settlement program, where we would go down and visit different planets, and we would do expeditions. We would collect data. So that was a huge privilege. I got to visit a couple of settlements where planets where settlement had already taken place. I learned a lot about that. And there is what I'm going to call an intergalactic resettlement program, but they're not going to like take the context of here on Earth. They're not going to just show up and evacuate a bunch of us onto ships and move us out into the universe or the galaxy. That's not going to happen because we're not mature enough. They're not going to import the things that are plaguing humankind into other spaceships or even into other worlds or
Right.
out into other populations. It's not going to happen. We have to reach a certain level of maturity. Some of us are finding that here in our time, but still a minority. So I don't want to get people's hopes up that they go, oh, if we have a nuclear war with Russia, we're all going to go to another planet. No, probably not.
Right.
We got to
Right.
deal with our own stuff. I'll just stop there because I know I've spoken to quite a bit and you might have questions.
Yeah, I have questions. I mean, I'm very interested in hearing this because it's so expansive and it's so out of the ordinary, but the information is so interesting for me. When you've prior to this experience and then thereafter, did you have any psychic abilities? Did you have any insight into the things that you then learned or you took with you after these experiences?
Well, I've always been extremely sensitive and intuitive. So it's always been a challenge for me to embed myself into the earthly social reality.
Right,
A lot of what other people just know, I don't seem to get. I tend to take things a bit literally. I'm a little bit what they would call neurodivergent. And so that's always led me to have to rely on my own instinct, what I would call my own instincts or my own intuition.
right,
And I do not have what I would consider very profound paranormal experiences. I don't see ghosts. I definitely sense energies. It's interesting. I have two cats now, and they also sense what I sense, which is positive feedback that I'm on the right track.
right,
But I do continue to have transdimensional experiences. Now, I never even knew that word, but it came to me in one of my transdimensional dream states. This is long after, this is just like in the last 3 years. And I was told that I was having transdimensional experiences, and I had to look it up on the internet. I didn't even know what it meant, and I went, oh my god, I am having transdimensional experience. So yeah, I do still have them, and I love them because it's very similar to lucid dreaming. You're completely lucid, and yet I'm having these other experiences, and it's really kind of thrilling, to be honest with you, to have them. And then only really in the last year or two, I understood how this is possible for me and other people. And it goes back to, I don't know, I don't want to take it off on a tangent too much, but if you're familiar with the Gateway Project,
Yes.
or if you're into, have studied anything about the many worlds theory or the simulation theory, but the Monroe Institute actually teaches people how we can leave time and space and exist outside of time and space. And then we know from quantum mechanics, and I'll refer specifically to the double slit experiments that they've done, that when they observe a particle changing from a wave to a, well, I should say a photon, when it changes from a wave to a particle, they also were shocked to find out that once we observe it as a particle, it somehow changes itself back through time so that it was always a particle, even though it used to be a wave. So where I'm going with this is, we do have certain states of consciousness where we can slip outside of the three-dimensional reality of time and space. And what we observe, whether we're there or here, is real. It's conscious and it becomes real for us.
Right.
It's just amazing, which really speaks to the fact that we are creator gods of our own making, if we just want to evolve and awaken to that. So I don't want to go too much onto that track, but I'm just trying to give you the framework of
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
this is possible, what happened to me, and it's possible for other people as well.
Insofar as having these experiences and seeing things that were, I guess, not relatable on the earthly plane, but more so into the future itself, was there any specific information that was pertinent to the human experience at the present moment that you received information from or information about?
Um, Probably. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what comes to mind, but I do know one thing that was really stressed to me is that our bodies are not just the meat wagon that houses our soul. Our bodies are a part of consciousness itself, and we need to learn to love ourselves. And what that means is not just, oh, I love myself, I'm so cool. What that means, love is like a basket. It includes mildness, self-control, patience, goodness, a lot of attributes. And until we can focus those attributes on ourselves, we don't know how to self-love. And until we can self-love, we're not truly going to take care of the temple body. So think of our bodies as being like temples, and our bodies produce a resonant frequency. So when we're able to hold the higher frequencies, it's much easier to slip into other matching frequencies, regardless of the dimension that they exist in, right? But so it starts with self-love, taking really good care of the temple body, allowing our body to have a conscious um, contribution to our reality, and how important that is. And that's one of the baby steps we can take towards development, to want, so that other beings are going to want to be in closer association with us and make themselves better known.
Right.
And it's a lot of work, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I have to work on patience every single day. I
Yeah.
have to work on self-control and self-discipline. It's up to me to be in charge of me, my mind, my psychology, my spirituality, my body. I have to be willing to say, yeah, I want to eat that, but I'm not going to. That is not in my best interest. But what happens is we develop a maturity that comes with that, and the other paranormal skills seem to come hand in hand with that. I'm not sure if I answered your
Yeah, you
question.
did. You did. It's interesting for myself, looking at my path in life and turning inward as opposed to outward, to
Yep.
taking ownership for my emotions, taking ownership for my health, my physical well-being, my mental, emotional being. And as we mentioned earlier when we first got on, we spoke about, or I said, removing my hand from the handrail or the programming that exists. And that takes a lot of courage. That's the first step of knowing we hold the power within ourselves to become self-reliant. And from that, as you mentioned, develop our own consciousness and develop our own autonomy. Um, so for me, hearing what you just described is unbelievable and inspiring to have that kind of insight. From your experience, did these experiences that you've had over that span of time improve your ability to eat better, to take care of your emotions better, and in what way? Maybe you can share.
Absolutely. Now, we are very much influenced by the company we keep. And in the past, my heart used to go out to people who had problems, and I always wanted to be there and help people. But what happened is often I ended up getting dragged down so that I didn't have the things I needed for myself, even if it's just energy. And so from being with these beings, it was incredibly inspiring and upbuilding, and I wanted to be more like them. I wanted to emulate them more. So it absolutely did help me. Now, I want to say that I actually developed a program. It's free. It's an online course called the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation. And it gives people skills on all aspects of their life, including and especially detoxifying from the construct, detoxifying from old ways of eating, detoxifying emotionally. People have no idea how toxic our environment is, the things they call food, makeup, cleaning supplies, personal care products. And if people's eyes aren't open to it, they don't realize that there needs to be some decontamination that you need to self-impose, right?
Yes.
But and so that's all part of the program, but each step is still only just gives people a jumping off point. So I recommend that people who take the program take what resonates with them and leave the rest. It's not like you have to follow it. It's not a religion. But in there, I also tell people that it's important to understand what is real food. So I'm not pro vegan, I'm not pro keto, I'm not pro carnivore, I'm not pro anything, but people need to start turning, and we all have different genetic um, needs,
Necessities,
and
yeah.
we have different sensitivities. Like, for instance, I didn't realize for many years that I had been consuming way too many oxalates, and that was causing me physical health issues, right? So I had to get rid of oxalates out of my diet. But the program doesn't put any one way of eating above another. The focus is find out what is real food, find out how to get clean food, and that's what you need to eat. And your body will naturally tell you what you need to eat. So I'm not in the whole program that I offer. I have to draw from many different belief systems, cultures, um, even religious backgrounds, so that it's very neutral to everybody and everybody can get some advantage out of it. So I put my own learning, and ultimately the program I wished I had had when I was going through my awakening process, and put that together. And so at version 3.0, I just launched it this spring. It's absolutely free. It's available on my website under the free resources tab. And I also have a quantum health transformation version 3.0 playlist on YouTube and other social media so people can access that. It's no strings attached. I won't even know if people are using the program, and it's not copyrighted. So people can not only use it and share it, if they've got their own program, they can incorporate elements as they see fit without any copyright issues or anything like that, because ultimately it's to help improve and elevate humanity. And I didn't that's why I didn't want to charge any money for it.
Right, right.
Not everybody has money, not everybody has um what they might need to get it. So I just wanted it to be universally out there for everybody. So a lot of what I did is in there. And then I also talk about how to create your own soul team, how to learn how to manifest, and not just law of attraction, but how to work with the seasons, how to understand how energy builds, how to understand chaos theory, because when we're bringing something into manifestation, things which we'll call wavicles need to come into become particles and need to become manifest in our reality. And in order for that to happen, there's turbulence. And so you might be trying to manifest something really positive into your life. Meanwhile, everything goes to shit and you can't figure out what the hell you've done wrong. That is a natural process. Be patient with it,
Yeah,
because as soon as the wavicle stabilizes particles, our reality, our desire comes into manifestation. So it just really helps people
it's great.
understand the mechanics of it. And I'm no scholar. I just know this stuff. I don't know. But anyway, so there's all of that, and it's free. So I just put in a little plug for that program, hoping it will help your viewers and your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. As I listen to this, it's interesting because sometimes we wish for things to manifest, and as you mentioned, the timing is everything. And we have these desires, I do healing work, we have other types of things. And in the process of doing something else, there's a calling, there's a purpose that's put in our way for us to really first take care of. In other words, clean in front of the door before the door will be able to open. And I've recognized that myself, to be patient with myself and to understand that I have to just sit and wait and be patient with myself and sit in solitude. And that's the most difficult part because we're in that ego state of rushing and desiring and wanting. But the words that you say again are very interesting. I was thinking about the thing you mentioned about having that partner in this transdimensional space. Um, is there any contact? Is there any dreaming on a continuum? Was there any information that you think is downloaded from that person itself? Do you see a face, a picture of the person at all, or imagery?
No, it's much more fantastical than that.
Okay.
I go to bed at night and I am living a different life. So I'll give you an example. In one of my transdimensional experiences, I end up going to the bathroom, a public washroom, because I'm at a public venue, and I look in the mirror and I'm a woman of color, about 30 years old, with beautiful curly dark hair, and I didn't realize it in my experience that I actually was somebody else, which
Wow.
is really interesting. Um, and in another experience, I was a man driving a car, and I was going someplace, and I had my keys, and it's very interesting. It's very, very interesting and so real, but I'm aware that it's me experiencing it. So like I don't know if I'm sharing somebody else's soul space within another body. Like I don't have all the details on how it works. I just know it works. Another
Yeah.
time I went and visited this really funky metaphysical shop, and the woman who worked there was totally aware of me, of my channels, of my shows, of the work that I do. And I was so excited that, because at the time I didn't quite realize I was in transdimensional space. And I was so excited and I thanked her so much. It meant so much to me because, sometimes we do the shows, we're not really aware of who's actually, getting the message, who's not, right? I was just so thrilled to be there. And and as I was leaving, I looked down and there was this little area with this little being that was busy building things. And I went, "What? What?" And I looked, and here this little being, he was building something, and he was a red color, and he looked like this little gnome. And I said to her, "What is that?" She says, "Oh, that's our golem." And I said, "Golem?" She says, "Yeah, we just found him wandering around the shop one day. We decided to give him his own space, and
Wow.
and he just builds things." And I was like totally shocked. And I was so amazed at what I was seeing. And obviously, at that point, I'm clearly in transdimensional space. I'm obviously not at home because I've never seen anything like that in my neighborhood.
Right.
And so after I woke up in the morning, I went and I had to Google what a golem was because I didn't even know what a golem was. So I mean, I'm having these experiences, and then I go look it up, and then I realize that it's a real thing, right? And anyway, just things like that. It's really fun. One time I was at this big picnic, and I was having so much fun with these people, and I asked, I asked the woman there. I said, "Am I dead?" Like, and she said, "I don't think so, Karen." And I went, "Oh my God, this is so lovely! Like, it's so lovely, and it's so big and bright and beautiful when it's happening to me. There's more colors than what we have in our usual spectrum. I'm usually so excited, that I'm conscious and I am in this other reality. It's
Right.
just amazing. It's just
Yeah.
amazing. And it happens to be fairly frequently. Sometimes it gives me a lesson, and sometimes it just doesn't even necessarily make any sense. But I'm obviously transdimensional. And if I'm transdimensional, so are a lot of other people. I have a friend who's part of the secret space program. He's definitely transdimensional. His experiences are not very pleasant and not very positive, but it's where he goes and the work he does while he's there,
Yeah.
So I don't know what to say. I don't have all the answers. I'm sorry. I don't, but I
Well,
sure enjoy
I don't
being
think the
me.
answers are necessary. I think the stories are necessary because everybody can conclude what they like from a story as opposed to a lesson. It's interesting. I've had a few experiences myself in dreams. I've shared this with other people in interviews. Uh, I saw a red pitchfork colored ship sailing overhead, like a big fleet. And in life experience, I've had a ship pass over me by the beach here in New Jersey, as well as the biggest blue orb I ever saw over the airport, right over my car. So for me, having those experiences, I know the dreams of ships reaching out to me and communicating in a woman's voice, speaking to me over my house. Um, I've had the understanding of, what lies beyond what we see with our two eyes and what the capacity is of the dream world and that connection. And so for you, hearing your story, when you speak to other people and you hear their stories that that they share over the things that I'm speaking about, what comes to mind for you? Like, what do you think about? Do you think about the comparison? Do you think about what questions do you ask them that are relative towards your experience?
I don't always I don't always bring my experience into it.
Right,
Now, I understand how fantastical and unbelievable my story is, my experiences are.
right.
So I give everyone the benefit of the doubt that what they're experiencing is super real to them. I don't try to figure it out. I don't try to debunk it in any way. I just ask them questions that just come to mind. I just whatever, like, they might be talking about being on a ship. I'll say, well, could you describe the inside of the ship? What does it look like to you? Most people don't have the kind of detail that I have, but often what happens is the inside seems much bigger than the way it looks from the outside, which is interesting.
Right.
um, and just get a sense of how the interactions with these beings went. So, for instance, I have friends. Well, I say they're friends. They're people who I've had on my show and I become friends with as a result. And they've had interactions with what we call the Greys. I've never had an interaction with the Greys. And the Greys is not just one group. There's apparently many different kinds of Greys, and some of them, like my friend Philip Kinsella, his experience was very frightening and intrusive and negative. But other friends like Dolly Saffron or Nancy Thames, their experiences were very, very positive with the Greys, right? So I just let them tell me what they want to tell me. And when I get curious about this or that or how it fits together, I just ask.
Yeah.
But I just welcome everybody because in a way, the as an observer, we're co-creating the experiences as well. So I just give everybody the dignity of being able to share their experience without me judging it or trying to poke holes in it or, or anything like that.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that you're an exopolitical ambassador. Can you define that?
Yeah, that's quite a different kind of being on the big ship. So I've talked about the experiences that felt very physical, felt very three-dimensional and very physical. The exopolitical work is very different. So that I'm often aware that I'm doing it, but I'm not necessarily there physically. So I'll give you an example. Um, I'll wake up in the middle of the night because I have to go to the bathroom. And I'm embarrassed because I'm well aware that I'm in the middle of a meeting. I'm meeting with other beings, and they are we're sharing information about a specific concept. So, for instance, and the other thing I want to say is I'm not the only one that does this. There's millions of us, I've been told, that do this. Just people don't remember it, or they think they're dreaming, or they have never validated it. So
Right.
I'm just one of many. I don't want to make it sound like I'm the ambassador for Earth. No way like that. So they want my perspective. They value my perspective and my take on things and what I think has gone wrong on planet Earth in our day and age, and how I can see solutions. And that doesn't mean they're going to jump in and fix everything, but it all goes into some kind of a data system where it's all kind of combined and taken into consideration, and they learn a great deal from us. So
Interesting.
anyway, I'll wake up in the middle of the night, got to use the washroom, totally aware that I'm in a meeting, and I at first I would be really embarrassed and wondered if they could see me go into the bathroom, I mean, you know, and go to the bathroom, get back into bed, go back to sleep, and be back in my meeting again. So I'm convinced I'm there etherically or on an energetic level or a consciousness transfer or something, I don't know. And I'm meeting with other beings, and and um and it's about information sharing. And again, I'm not the only one, but I am definitely an exopolitical ambassador. They want to hear and they want to understand my perceptions, especially during this time on Earth that we're living in right now. So again, I'm not, there's millions of us. And the other thing is most people don't remember, and they don't have their memories erased. Like it's not some kind of psychic rape where you have your memories erased. You agree to not remember when you come back because we're here for a certain amount of soul evolution. We got to fit into society. Let's face it, in especially in Western societies, ET contact is considered mental illness, considered extreme deviance. You know what I'm
Yeah, yeah.
saying? We need to have our lives back. And so we agreed to forget. So there's a lot of the work that I've done as a an exopolitical ambassador that I don't remember the details of it. I'm not supposed to remember, but I definitely go there, do that. And that is also facilitated on the same big ship as where I had my physical experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting you speak about the big ship. I have a shamanic mentor from Ecuador who's, I'd say, in his 70s, the 80s, and spoke about a meeting that took place in the forest maybe 30 years ago, where he said a big mothership landed, came down, and off stepped Jesus and Archangel Michael, um, as vivid as a person standing in front of him, and the two of them were almost one, and how this massive ship, as you described to some extent, I don't know if it's similar or it is that ship, filled the sky and came down to, and he was called to this, to the front to speak or to be spoken to, and so it's very interesting. When is there any type of connotation of Jesus? Because I hear a lot of people who've had near-death experiences and seeing the light come from a ship behind Jesus, just as the light shines in many religious icons and other types of paintings as well. So maybe you have somewhat of a take or something to share about that.
Sure. So I think that a lot of how we take these experiences that we don't have language for, we don't even have the concepts, all that's been scrubbed from humanity, and then we filter it through our own understanding and our own worldview. So for myself, I'm not a religious person. I used to be. Now, I have no disrespect for other people who are religious. If it works, fantastic. Just for
Right.
me, I'm not a religious person. I've been there, done that, and I'm not religious anymore. So in my experiences, I did not see saints or Christ Jesus or anything like that. However, I did see a small group of beings on the big ship, and I call them angelics, but they're not actually angels. They were just so beautiful and so big and so bright that that's just a name I've given them. Nobody ever said to me, I'm a this or I'm a that.
Right. Right.
I don't need to have names. And we don't use English anyway, so I'd be making it up if I did have names for them. So like I said, I make up the name of the angelics, and they sort of stuck to themselves, but boy, they were really beautiful. And I was a bit embarrassed because I couldn't help staring at them, because they were just commanded, they had so much presence. They looked a bit like, on the old artwork that accompanied, the old cuneiform writing, like the really, really old historical stuff we have on Earth. And they had, images of Gilgamesh and stuff with the big beards and the long hair and the really super stocky, buff bodies. They look like that.
Wow.
And so that's the closest I could get to any kind of biblical or religious reference. No, the rest are just all just amazing, healthy and beautiful and peaceful and loving beings.
Yeah. Let's move back, I guess, to the subject or back to the earth in some way in terms of the shamanic grounding ourselves with shamanic work. Maybe you could share a little bit about your background on shamanism and your experiences with that.
Well, for me, shamanism is not really necessarily what it might mean to someone else.
Right.
Okay. So, for instance, if someone writes to me and says, I need help with, and it could be anything, it could be their health, it could be their financial situation, it could be whatever. I don't know where it comes from, but I just get an immediate knowing or suspicion of what the issue might be. And then, and so that's where I get the shamanic or the beyond the veil component. And
Right.
then I
Right.
take everything I know from my own life experience and my own wisdoms that I've gathered throughout my life, and I combine the two, and then I give them the feedback. And then it's up to them what they want to do with it. However, I have to say, up to this point, everybody I have done that for has been totally blown away at how on point it was.
Yeah.
And so I tell them, this is not me, Karen, being the wisest person in the world. This is coming to me from Source, God, the spiritual realms, and then I integrate it with what I feel quite solidly about. And I'm pretty much never um, believing that people have to eat a certain way or perform, be a certain spiritual way. I always give them, because I really believe that their true wisdom, spirituality comes from within themselves. Their answers are within them, right? So what I try to do is just get them in the right direction and give them the confidence to then go within. And so I would say that's how I do shamanic work. It's helping people to find their own spiritual path, answers, wisdoms, and to believe in themselves. Like we're taught, you have to go to these external sources, the doctor, the priest, the lawyer, the expert. No, it's all inside. Like what you said earlier, it's inside.
Yeah.
But people have been um, we've been very much programmed to have no confidence in ourselves. And I can't tell you the problems I've run into by relying on expert advice, especially around food and things like that. When I just take the chance and let my body guide me, oh my gosh, I have so much better results. So that's how I do
Yeah.
shamanism. It's not really anything spooky or mystical or paranormal. It just happens, and it happens in a flash. It's interesting. It happens in a flash, and then
Yes.
it takes me sometimes a couple hours to be able to formulate it into language that I think the other person would be able to accept it,
Yeah.
and digest it.
Yeah, I do Akashic record readings and I do shamanic journeying. I do it every Tuesday evening. So I have a group of people on YouTube that join in for, in search of a spirit, the spirit animal that passes on the information. So it's interesting for myself as you speak about how a download of information comes through over a person's life and what they need to hear. For me, it's usually the past, some type of inner child work, the wounded inner child that's really
Yep.
holding back the adult self and ruling the adult until you make friends with it, and so to speak. So for me, it's more about that type of seeing. I see the past of how the past interrupted some point of a person's life, and it's interesting that most people are in touch with it but don't want to touch it because it's too painful. They want to leave that in the past. Maybe you could talk a little
Um,
bit about inner work, inner child work, or the inner child.
well, I want to actually tell you and your audience a technique that I used because I had some childhood traumas and some stuff that was pretty hard to deal with. And I'm going to tell you a very different approach that you might find helpful. This is an absolutely true experience of mine. So I had these recurring memories of my relationship with my mother. It made me really sad and was really holding me back. And I decided that I was going to create a lie. I was going to create a false memory of something that happened between my mother and I that was very positive. So I created the memory, even though it was completely fake, it was mine. I designed it. I embellished it. I was totally aware of that.
Wow.
And in my memory, I had it so that when I came home after school, my mother would always prepare tea and we'd have a little tea party. And she'd want to hear about my day and she'd give me eye contact. And she really cared about me and wanted to hear what was going on for me. Oh my God, it made me feel so good. I loved it. So I practiced and I practiced, and I never told another living soul. And I swear to God, this is true, Adam. It's going to make me cry. I went to visit my mom about 6 months later. I never told her, never told anybody. And right out of the blue, she turned to me and she said, Karen, do you remember the tea parties we used to have after school?
My God. Wow.
So go back to the double slit experiment. When we see something as being real and we have emotion embellished into it, the past changes to make it real. How did my mom know that? How
Wow.
could she have that memory? And so when it's too painful to go back, make up a new one.
Yes.
Create and make something beautiful that warms your heart and draws you closer to that person in love. And it's miraculous.
That's
It's
beautiful.
miraculous, Adam. I can't I swear this is true, and
It's
this is what worked
amazing.
for me.
So interesting because most times people when they're manifesting they're told obviously to feel the emotion of as if you've had it already or as if you
Yeah.
haven't. So in essence you went back in time to create that emotional feeling and then it happened. Wow, it's so interesting. You see,
And my mom remembered it. And after that, I just stopped taking the past so seriously.
yeah. See, I'm writing a book about my child, not about my childhood, about my connection to my grandmother in my childhood because I needed that eye contact. I needed that touch. I needed that conditional, unconditional love that I didn't experience with my mother and nor my father. And so for me, I never really wanted to now go back and I guess reinvent the scenarios or the situations so as to have a story to keep me motivated, I guess, to live the life the way I have. Although I try to be positive, I also had, I guess, the victim mindset growing up. And for me, I've overcome that through my own insight and my own intuition. But of course, there are remnants of, and there will naturally be specifically that I'm writing the past. But that's a good idea. I'm going to have to clear my energy field by doing that because otherwise
Yeah,
it'll be hypocritical for me to tell the story of the past and then that evening have a tea party with my mother and then write again.
well, It might not be a tea party, it might be something different, but I also teach that. So in the free course I was talking about,
Okay,
I go into and I teach how to do that as well. And I highly recommend it. Anyway, I don't think, like, I know I'm an oddball, but I don't think I'm that different than everyone else. And if it works for me, maybe it would work for someone else. And
excellent.
boy, it's the most I think what it is the power of love is miraculous.
Well,
And
self-love,
that's what that does. It's got so much power. And then the negative stuff does not have as much power. We think it does because it hurts,
right.
but it really doesn't have that much power. When we replace it or supplant it with something so powerful that's so loving, oh my God, it's like having a big eraser, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. We don't we it's difficult to create self-love if we've never seen an example of love
Mm-hmm.
or self-love given to us. And I guess by what you've created, that imagery of creating that scenario, it created a sense of self-love because you saw love given to you. I mean, I know people get sick, they hook into the medical world in order to get attention and love. It's a form of
Mm-hmm.
love. It's a form of getting
Mm-hmm.
attention. I mean, I know the path I was on, I'm writing a little bit about being in junior high school and fighting in a house and not getting any attention of a positive attention, any eye contact, like you mentioned. And then how do you get attention? I don't feel well. So you come home and you create illness and you
Yeah,
and you
I've done that too.
right. And so I
I've
created that
done that too.
psychosomatic experience for myself. And that's, I think, what many people are hooked into because they don't get love and there's no self-love and they get love. They think love is being taken care of by somebody. And who's that somebody? If it's outside of our family, it could be the doctor. It could be medicine.
Absolutely. And that's another thing I teach in my free online course is how to start loving yourself. So what I had to do was I had to look at myself as being a younger, inexperienced version of me. So I don't know if you've had children, Adam, but when I had children, there was a lot of things I did differently than what I had. Yeah, me too. I did a lot of things differently with them because I was missing that in my life. And so I grew up as a broken person. I wanted to give them better than what I had. So I made the effort to do for them things that weren't done for me. I wasn't perfect, but I really did shift a lot of that intergenerational
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yes.
Okay. So now what we do is we take a look at ourselves as being a younger version of us, a less experienced, maybe a broken or even a wounded self. And then I grew an internal parent so that I parented myself and I knew what I needed. Again, getting back to, I want to eat this. No, you're not going to eat that. That's not good for you. Let's instead go do this. This is more fun. Take your mind off it. You know what I mean? Like I literally had to grow an internal parent.
Right, right.
And then I parented myself until the point where I didn't need to do that anymore because I grew up. So I had to do that for me. So that's also part of my free online program.
Yeah, that's so interesting because it's acknowledging the part that is running in the background like a program
Yeah.
that is overriding the program in the present reality, which has to say, okay, I hear you, I know you're important, I love you. Teach me what I need to hear from you, and I'll teach you what I can give what you didn't get. And so that dialogue of that inner child for myself as I worded it, and you spoke it a little differently, but in essence, it's becoming whole again and not shutting out the parts that we felt weren't good enough or we wanted to excuse or we were embarrassed about. And many people are walking around in that schizoid out of body mindset. I know I have.
And
Yeah,
sorry, I was going to say, and it takes a lot of energy.
yeah,
And when we free up that energy, now we can do our God-given abilities, like, for instance, transdimensional travel and reality and interdimensional reality. Now it just frees up tons and tons of energy. So when you think about the system we're living in, it's really designed to keep us weak, powerless, sick, and screwed up,
yeah.
and it's like a weight. And once we get rid of that weight or we start to clear that weight, oh my God, you have so much energy. You feel like you have superpowers. Well, really, we do have superpowers.
Yeah.
And that's the big secret that I want to blab all over this whole planet to everybody, is that we can free ourselves up and have this amazing energy. And then there are other beings who then are able to come into our lives or into our consciousness to help us go even further. So yeah, and that's how we change the world.
Yeah.
And we stop giving our power to be people that don't friggin' deserve it. Pardon my language.
Absolutely.
We take it back and we heal. We heal our communities and our families and
Yeah,
our world.
but I think it takes the inner awareness to first question our own upbringing and how we've been raised and how we've been wounded, and to no longer be in victim mindset, but to take the step of the warrior and use the lessons that we experience as teaching experiences as opposed to something to hold us back. So many people are
Yes.
afraid to take ownership for their own lives in case they fail or they're not successful or afraid of success. They stay in this place of anonymity and of poor me. And I think it's necessary to some extent in order to then see yourself like that, so then you can realize, I don't want to be like that anymore, or I want to grow
Yeah,
from that. Um,
absolutely. I've been through it. You've been through it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
something at some point helped us to shift
yeah,
and to start doing things differently. Just the desire to do it differently, you know?
yeah. But
And I wasted a lot of my life. I'm an old lady now. I'm 68 years old. It's only been like, especially the last 10 years that I really started to get this, how this all works. And now I'm going to have a really good time with it because I
it's
love it.
excellent. It's inspiring. It's interesting to see people climb the ladder and almost realize, like, we're talking about going down a rabbit hole of information, but it's obviously actually going up the higher floors of a building. Not being, most people think, oh, you think you're better because you know this, or you hear this ego type of chatter in certain ways. But actually, it's just opening yourself up and becoming lighter, and then having an opening to the higher dimensions and the information. And I've noticed myself as well, the different steps I've taken, or what I perceive or what I receive as my own personal download of heightening myself, and at the pace that my body probably would be able to handle it and deal with it. So from your perspective, seeing what you've gone through, it's a very interesting experience, and it's eye-opening and inspiring for me, especially to hear that. Um,
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm
yeah,
glad I'm used to somebody, you know. This is great.
yeah. But maybe you could talk a little bit about your Forbidden Knowledge news network that you host.
Yeah, yeah. The network is actually owned by Chris Matthew. He's the one who started the Forbidden Knowledge News channel, and I've been friends with him now for well, even before I started my own channels. He inspired me to start my own channel. I was actually wrote to him, and he had me as guest on his show. That's how it started. And then eventually I created my own channel and started doing YouTube videos and stuff. Um, and he liked my content and stuff, so he asked me to join the network. So his network is about a half a dozen, maybe a little bit more now, of ordinary people who started their YouTube channel and were just consistently pumping out content that is in some way positive and helping people. You know, it can be debunking a lot of the mainstream information. It could be some of us, offer health and healing. I offer content, especially around extraterrestrials and angels, but also I have the Quantum Guide Show, where I interview people who have something positive to offer the world. And so we're just consistently pumping out our best. And so we've come together in this very loosely affiliated group under the Forbidden Knowledge Network, which is growing and becoming more popular. Chris has a new show called It Happened on March the 4th, because he had a transcendent experience and decided he needed to take more of a spiritual direction and start having people on who've had positive spiritual experiences. And yeah, the whole thing is just growing and growing and becoming increasingly popular. And he also puts out audio podcasts of all of our shows on all audio platforms, all of them.
Yeah, but your show is Aliens and Angels, correct, on your
Well, I
podcast?
have Well, on the Forbidden Knowledge Network, I'm known as the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton, and
Okay.
then under that are my independent videos and shows. Also, my second show, which is live every Sunday at noon Mountain Time, and it's a community building live show. So I have guests on, or we just discuss interesting topics, and everyone who shows up in the live, I use StreamYard, and I put their their information or what they want to say up on the screen, and they actually become part of the conversation. So Wednesdays when I do the Quantum Guide show, I'm interviewing people, but Sunday it's a community building live chat where people can come in and be part of the conversation. So I'm really enjoying that a lot.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and to get in touch with you, where could they do that?
They can do that through the contact page on my website. My website is www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com. That's KarenHolton, healthcoach.com. Obviously, I'm a different kind of health coach. I'm into helping other people find their own resources within, so they're not dependent on me. And but I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got all my shows are on there. I've got a few products, a few services, but I have the free resources tab, and then there's tons of videos. There's the 9 steps to quantum health transformation version 3.0. Everything is laid out there for people.
Yeah, I'll share that. Yeah, I was interested in the assessment, the health assessment, which is interesting what you just spoke about. That's an interesting concept because so many people are in need of, as we said, merging away from what they know as conventional towards a more neutral stance or neutral place of finding a balance between the left, right, yin and yang, or dark and light, however you want to call it, but slowly moving to a place of becoming more dependent as opposed to codependent on a system. Um,
Yeah. The
if
funny
you,
thing is, too, is once we step out of the box, we find out we're all in the same room. It's really interesting. There's the mainstream box,
right,
and
right,
then everything else is outside, and there's no conflict outside. It's only within the what I call the construct
yes.
that there's these differences and conflicts and things. It's so freeing. It's so exciting.
Well, if you could leave the audience with like a lasting message from your experience or something you'd like them to remember, what would you say?
Well, I think probably to stress that there's really only two things. There's love and there's fear. And, it's natural for us to have some fear when we contemplate opening ourselves up to some transdimensional experiences or some beings that are not from this world, or ways of healing ourselves that are, unconventional. That is perfectly natural. But the thing is if we're sick and tired of being sick and tired, we need to try something new. And I have found nothing to be afraid of when I'm on my pursuit of my higher journey. And I just want to recommend that people learn to trust themselves and learn to love themselves. And if it makes you feel fearful or it gives you the no feeling, just turn away from it. And if whatever it is gives you the yes feeling and makes you feel love, then that's a good thing. And that's a really easy way to get started, is just listening to what our body's telling us, our body sensations, and how we're perceiving an emotional response through our physical body. The body is so much smarter than our mind, and it's a wonderful guide and a wonderful leader, I think.
Yeah, it's like almost like remember the game Operation,
Yeah.
where you go over the different parts of the body. It buzzes. It's interesting if we sit and focus and take heed the messages of what the body has to say. Like you said, it's talking to us, and it's a good diagnostic tool for us to heed. So
Risks.
I'd like to thank you for joining me today and sharing the information that you did. I'm inspired by you and your story and your character, your courageous and strong figure that you are, like a totem pole. Uh, I thank you for being with me today.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be here. It's been great to enjoy you. I hope to have you on my show, the Quantum Guide Show, sometime. I hope we can make that happen.
Yes,
I'd love
absolutely,
to hear
absolutely.
more about your work and what you're doing. And yeah, it's all good. I'm just thrilled and I'm wishing much love to the listeners and the viewers. And yeah, happy days are ahead.
Happy days are ahead. I'll keep in contact with you. I'll send you the link and we'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you so much. Take
Okay,
care.
Kim.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye.